Welcome to the 7 Habits of Highly Successful UCC Professionals. This is our 5th in the series, and Doug will be sharing with us habit number 5, and we will announce a date at the end for the next one for habit number 6. We're closing in on our number 7, so before the end of the year we'll have that wrapped up and then start with the next series of webinars. So without any further ado, Doug Tolley will present us on habit number 5.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate the opportunity for you to take a few minutes with us today. As always, we'll be respectful of your time, and this will be short and hopefully potent. We've been working on this presentation of highly successful UC professionals for a while. The overriding that came to us as we began to prepare this project around Stephen Covey's work, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, was this particular statistic that came from Gartner that said that 80% of all UC projects are implemented without any sort of overarching strategy. Now, shocking as that may sound, as I spend a lot of time doing business consulting in value-added resellers and other managed service providers, I find that this is very often true as they go in and try to solve the problems for their customers, that there isn't an overarching strategy. Even in the biggest organizations that I've been in, companies like Fortune 100 companies in the last 6 months, many do not have an overarching strategy, which is interesting, but it also creates opportunity, of course. We all know that the communications ecosystem that all of this stuff runs on is very complex and has a lot of moving parts and components, and it isn't very easy to continue to keep healthy and happy and moving in the right direction. And the biggest problem with that typically is the fact that all of these things, voice, data, file sharing, bring your own device, mobility, and everything else that influences or impacts the ecosystem, the communications ecosystem, I mean, all rides on the same pipe, all competing for the same bandwidth. And we see you as the UC professionals, those that are here, these nameless, faceless, sometimes thankless individuals who are trying to hold this whole thing up. And so as a quick recap of what we've covered in the previous seminars, the first habit is, of course, to be proactive. And we know this graphic's a little bit slow coming in. We know that as we add more and more things to our network infrastructure, at some point it's going to collapse. And so we need to be proactive in making sure that what we put on there is exactly what needs to be there, and that everything is playing nicely together, and that all of our various components are working together in a way that doesn't leave our network completely disintegrating on us. We also need to balance the idea of putting out fires versus working on our overall strategy. Habit number 2 talks about beginning with the end in mind. If we know where we're going, we have a much better chance of getting somewhere that we want to be. In addition, it's interesting as we look at being proactive and putting first things first, or being proactive and beginning with the end in mind, that there's an idea of understanding what is most important right now. And we've talked about these in previous sessions, which can be found in our YouTube channel and also on our blog. But this really leads these first 3 habits to a paradigm shift, where the change that we're trying to make is entirely self-directed, not influenced from the outside, but directed by us, and being proactive in knowing where we want to go and knowing that we're always doing the right thing at the right time right now. The fourth habit then that we talked about last time, this idea of making things a win-win. What we like about that idea is this quote from Steve Jobs, where he talks about the fact that people don't care exactly how Apple gets things done. They just have this expectation that Apple will do things well and elegantly, and that their products will work. And I like this last paragraph where he says, customers pay us, Apple, to sweat all the details so it's easy and pleasant for them, the customer, to use the computers. And when we think about how we can help make our teams win, our internal customers win, our external customers win, that we always think in a win-win scenario and not who gets the credit for what got done, we find that unified communications professionals are a lot more successful. The habit we wanted to talk about today is the idea of first understand and then be understood. Our blog post has some interesting stories around this, but really it starts with this concept that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and the idea is hopefully we listen twice as much as we speak. And I told a story on the blog that I wanted to repeat today that was kind of fun. I used to sell ShoreTel phone systems. We went into a customer who was interested in a new phone system. We talked a bunch about all of the various features and functions and how great ShoreTel's their PC interface was, and how you could drag and drop calls and look at the soft phone and all of this other stuff. And we never asked the customer what they really wanted. When they took us on a tour of their manufacturing facility, they had 100 employees, none of which had a personal computer. And the IT manager said, so in order to get all these cool features that you're offering, we're going to need to buy everybody a PC, right? And we said, oh, geez, we kind of missed the target there. It's interesting how if we'd have just asked some better discovery questions up front, we would have avoided the opportunity of maybe embarrassing ourselves, or worse yet, completely losing the sale, even though I think at the time, had we pitched it a little bit differently, that ShoreTel might have been a good phone system option for this particular company. I also was reminded this morning as I was getting ready about a story that happened when I was in college. I had a professor in college in biology that was so specific in the way he spoke that sometimes it sounded like he said things wrong, but it was because he wanted to be very accurate and really precise in the way he pronounced all the Greek and Latin words that are often found in biology. Well, one of those interesting words is the word hypothesis, which we all know if we've ever helped our kids with a science fair project. A hypothesis, our best guess based on, before we do the experiment, what do we think is going to happen? What's our hypothesis? But there's another word in biology, the accurate or scientific word for the pituitary gland, which is the hypophysis. Hypophysis. And he had spent half the lecture talking about hypophysis. And the kid next to me said, how in the world could we have a biology teacher with a terrible lisp like that? And I turned to him and I said, he's talking about the pituitary gland, not a hypothesis. And it was so funny how that little syllable change made such a dramatic difference in our understanding of what our biology teacher was talking about. The kid next to me clearly missed the entire point of the lecture, and I wonder how many in the room actually missed it. I also wonder if that wasn't by design from this particular teacher, who was really kind of a hard guy to get an A out of. But I think about that in business and say to myself, if I miss things by a syllable, and it is the difference between an A and an F in biology class, how much are we missing when we don't pay attention, in our sales calls, in our internal meetings, and our meetings with our wives and our kids and our families? And I'll just tell another couple of quick stories. On the blog post, we also talked about the fact that we went to a seminar where healthcare professionals were talking about some of their largest challenges. One of the presentations was about the cloud and how great the cloud was going to be and how advanced things were going to change and how data was going to be pushed to the cloud. And it was really a compelling presentation. This guy was a little bit ahead of his time. This was 5-6 years ago, and really he was kind of on the cutting edge at the time. Our presenter from the VX Suite LVM Inc. company was Roger Blome. He stood up after this gentleman who gave an amazing presentation and just asked the question, what's the biggest challenge facing you right now? One of the hospital administrators in the front row raised his hand and said, I have 50,000 pagers and I have to change the batteries every month. He was so far removed from being able to think about the cloud that there was no way that he could actually address cloud computing and security in the cloud and bring your own device and all those other things when he was really head down trying to understand how he was going to get 50,000 pager batteries changed on a monthly basis. And last but not least, David Arvin, who's the author of It's Not Who You Know, But Who Knows You, tells a great story about his wife sending him to the store for marjoram, a spice, and he came back with margarine, a cheap butter substitute, and obviously wasn't even close to what she needed to make the dinner party work. I think that very often we don't spend enough time listening, and we spend more time trying to decide what it is we're going to say next, or what the person we're talking to, how their conversation is fitting into our vision of what we need to do and what needs to be done next, and maybe sometimes even completely distracted, thinking about the 150 other things that are rattling around in our minds instead of being truly present and really understanding the conversation that's right in front of us. I ask people all the time, what products do you sell, as I consult with value-added resellers. And they'll give me the list of products that they sell. Very often it's a particular manufacturer of servers or switches or phone equipment. And I ask them a question that I hope becomes something that we think about all the time, and that is, do you ever recommend your competitor's product? And the answer is usually no. And I understand that from a sales perspective, but if we're truly selling solutions, is it possible that a Cisco shop once in a while should recommend a Link implementation? Is it possible that an Avaya shop should once in a while say, you know, as an SMB, you probably fit a little bit better with a ShoreTel phone system? I think this concept of listening first before you speak is really critical. If you can see the slides, and I hope most of you can, as you look at this picture, it makes you wonder if this guy doesn't have the world's most spectacular mustache, or if there's a very skinny blonde lady standing right in front of him. And this optical illusion, I think that the truth of the matter is that very often my first inclination with situations and people isn't always correct. And if I take the time to really listen and to really think and to really try to understand what's going on, and then after processing what all of those various inputs, then I have the chance to really be communicating in a way that's meaningful and it's understood. By the way, people love to talk about themselves anyway. One of the best ways to get, I find, to get the information that I need not only in a sales call but interactions with my employees and others, is to ask them questions about themselves and let them tell you everything that you need to know how to work with them better, how to talk with them better, how to communicate better, how to pique their interest, and also how to get people to won over to your side once you understand a little bit more about them. If we seek first to understand, it's a lot easier for us to ultimately be understood. There's always a need for better listening. I know my wife needs me to listen better. I know my kids need me to listen better. I'm convinced that my employees and my colleagues need me to listen better. And so if we're thinking about what we're going to say next and we're not actually listening, there's some things we can do to improve that. One is put away all the distractions. Force yourself to never look at the cell phone during a meeting. Force yourself to actually take notes, whether that be on a pad of paper or on an iPad with a stylus like I prefer, or on a Surface tablet with a stylus like my boss prefers. Taking notes helps us be more active listeners. The other thing is that I find helps a lot is to constantly sort of reframe or restate what the person's saying. Say, so what you're saying is, or what you're trying to help me understand, or what you just explained is, and in doing that kind of active listening, although that's one of those techniques, again, that's taught at every sales conference, really helps us stay present and stay focused and not have all of the million other distractions that are in the back of our minds. I think that when we really understand what somebody else needs and do our very best to help them get what they want, that we'll find that we are less likely to buy margarine when our wife has asked us to buy marjoram. We're less likely to write down hypothesis on our biology test when the professor intended us to understand the hypophysis or pituitary gland. We're less likely to be talking about the cloud when somebody really just needs their pager batteries changed. And we're less likely to sell them a PC-based phone system when they don't have any PCs in the entire facility. I think that there's so much of life that is about communication. And I read a statistic the other day that said over 50% of communication is miscommunication. If that's true, and we go into all of our interpersonal interactions thinking that half of the time we're probably not going to communicate as effectively as we think we should or think we are, we'll probably be a lot more clear, we'll be a lot more succinct, and we'll find that we have better interpersonal relationships when we do that. We're excited to continue on this path of the 7 habits. The habit today, of course, is first seek to understand, then to be understood. Listen first and speak second. Next time we'll be talking about the idea of synergizing. We're excited to have you join us. If this is the first time you've joined us, you can find some of these presentations on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for VX Suite. And you can find our company on Twitter at VX Suite, and my personal Twitter handle is Tali Lama. Feel free to continue the conversation there. Comment on our blog post on our website at vxsuite.com. and check us out on our YouTube channel. And we'll see you next time.